It is May 31st, 2019. It is 28 years, 11 months, and 5 days since I masturbated or used pornography. That's my sobriety definition. Today, we're answering a question from Khalid Hussaini, who's from Morocco. And Khalid has asked about motivations for PMO. Why would somebody get into PMO recovery? And I can tell you what my experience was. I had stopped drinking 31 years ago, and what I found is that I was married to my first wife, and things were going really bad. The marriage was really not working, and I really wanted to keep my family together. And I had my daughter, who's now 33, and she at that time was less than 1 year old. She was about 10 months old, and I wanted to keep my family together. And so I didn't want to divorce my wife. And so I looked at my life to see what was I doing in my life that was causing the marriage not to be good and to work. And it was called a sexual inventory, a moral inventory. For those who are familiar with the steps, it's called a fourth step. We do a fearless and searching moral inventory. And as I took my moral inventory, I found I was doing two things wrong sexually that were morally wrong. One is I was cheating on my wife. I was having sex with someone else and lying about it. And that was clearly morally wrong. The second thing I was doing was I was masturbating to porn. Now, it wasn't always to porn, but I was masturbating every day, pretty much for about 10 minutes. And I was lying to my wife about it, not telling her. And so I was having this sexual experience by myself and not sharing it with my married partner. And those two things, it became very clear to me I was doing that were wrong. And so as I looked at what I was doing wrong, I wanted to stop doing those things so that my side of the street would be clean, so that I could contribute to a healthy marriage, which would make our family work better. Now, it turned out that our family, we got divorced. They fell apart because there were a lot of other things wrong with it besides just me. It takes two people to be in a relationship, and I'm not both of them. And she had her own stuff that she needed to work on and wouldn't do it. But that's not my business and not my problem. My problem is, what am I doing? Mind my own business. What is wrong with me that I can change? And so the first thing I stopped doing was I stopped cheating on my wife. And it was a disaster area. It was just a disaster. I had this student of mine who was legal age. She was 25 and I was about 29 at the time. And we were having sex in my teaching studio after hours. And I told her, I said, I've got to stop doing this. I can't do this anymore. I'm doing something wrong. And I had stopped drinking. And to stay stopped drinking or any addiction, you have to start doing right stuff. And I said, I'm sorry. I'm doing the wrong thing. I'm hurting you, and I'm hurting me, and I'm hurting others, and I need to stop. And, that worked for 4 or 5 days, and then I'd get real needy, and the craving would start up, and I'd say, oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I changed my mind. Come back over and see me. And she'd come back over. We'd have sex, and then we'd do that for 3 or 4 days, and then I'd start feeling guilt and shame again. And then I'd say, oh, baby, we got to stop. I'm doing the wrong thing. And my soul would be burning with remorse. And then I'd say, we got to stop doing this. And so she said, okay. And then about 4 or 5 days, I'm like, oh, baby, I was wrong. Wow, I was crazy back there. And she'd come back over. And she did that for about 4 months. And finally, she had enough. Said, I've had enough of this craziness. This is too crazy. And she had enough of me. And that was the end of it. So it took me about 4 or 5 months. It wasn't clean. It wasn't linear. It wasn't sharp-edged and upright. It was messy. And it was painful. And it was ugly. But I did it. You don't have to do this pretty, but you got to do it. And so I stopped. And I never did that again for 28 years, 11 months, and 5 days. I never did that. The other thing I had to do, and like I said, motivation was to keep the family together. The other thing was about the porn and the masturbation. The porn wasn't that hard for me to stop because I got a pretty lurid imagination. But stopping masturbating was really hard for me. And I started going to meetings. And I got to tell you guys, most of these videos are going to, in the 195 countries they go to, most of you guys haven't got meetings in your country. But in some of the countries in Europe and America, there are meetings where you sit face to face with each other for an hour and you talk out loud in front of people and say what you're doing. And the good news about that is it takes away the shame and the fear that you feel so that you don't act out. but most of you don't have it. That's why I'm making this video for those of you men who cannot get onto a meeting face-to-face or cannot afford to get on our phone meetings 6 times a day, that you can only get on Facebook because it's free. That's the reason we're doing this, okay? But you have to get to a meeting so they can reduce shame, because an addict by himself is in bad company. So I would go 23 days of masturbating, 34 days of masturbating, 43 days of masturbating, 57 days of masturbating, and finally, after 22 and a half months, I stopped masturbating on June 26, 1990, and I haven't masturbated for 28 years, 11 months, and 5 days, but who's counting? Me! So that's the good news. So the motivation, Khalid, was I wanted to keep my family together. Now that's not what happened. But what did happen was I got myself together. And I ended up having full custody of my daughter when she was 3, and I raised her completely by myself until she was 21, and she went out on her own and started her own life. Now she's a professional psychotherapist. She's married, and she doesn't drink. She hasn't had a drink of alcohol in 13 years. So she started her own brilliant life. But it was because I got to raise her, and I got to raise her because I looked at myself and said, what am I doing wrong? And then the most important thing was, could I stop? And here's the litmus test, Khalid. If you're trying to stop porn and you can't stop in the last 12 months, then you need help. All of us do. If you need help, you've got to find some way to get it. If you can't go to face-to-face meetings, then you've got to go to online meetings. If you can't go to online meetings, then you can watch these videos, and I'm going to keep sending one out every day here to this site on Facebook called NoFap Success. So thanks for the question. We'll see you in the next video.